development film for Android game synSpace Drone Runners. But first of all, a little slideshow. I think maybe my Wi-Fi is down, but we don't need that where we're going. So let's simplify that stuff. So we're going to use this subsystem today, where there's a synthesizer, and its output goes to the sequencer, which can record it, like recording a song, and it stores it in the form of a groove. There's a little database of grooves that you've collected, so they're kind of collectible. And the sequencer can then play it back, where it will come out the speaker and you'll hear it and enjoy it for all time. But then in the opposite direction, you've got a microphone that normally goes into this thing called the vocoder. And so if you talk or sing or play your guitar or something just acoustically, it goes into the vocoder, which tries to turn it down into note events, which it then sends into the sequencer, the same as the synthesizer sent those same kind of events. So just as a synthesizer can send an event that says, oh, he has just pushed the C key, so can the vocoder. The vocoder also has temporary recordings through its processing, where 25 times a second, it takes all the samples that occurred in that 25th of a second and does a spectrum analysis on them and comes up with a little snapshot of a spectrum, which looks a little like one of these. The new thing today, other than some just general UI tweaks, is I added an option so that the vocoder can listen, instead of listening to the microphone, it can listen to the output of the synthesizer sequencer. So this allows me to use the synthesizer to make interesting wave shapes, or the sequencer to make interesting note patterns where the notes have interesting wave shapes. And I can read it back, and I can do a spectral analysis of it, and I can see if I'm measuring the peaks that I thought I was sticking in there. So it's a way of testing my code, but it's also, another way to have fun. The first experiment along those lines is that, let me just fix that so that nobody complains about me. Okay, so that's a sawtooth signal. What I recall is that the sawtooth represents the sum of all the harmonics of the signal, well, the fundamental and the harmonics, although I guess the fundamental is the first harmonic, so everything's a harmonic. Anyway, the sum of all of them, the first, the second, the third, the fourth, but in smaller amounts, so that the first one, if it gets 1 unit of energy, then the second one gets 1/2 a unit, the third one gets 1/3 of a unit, the fourth one gets 1/4 of a unit. And what I've shown here is 1, 2, 4, 3, 4, and 8, but in between you can see 5, 6, and 7, and just after 9. And I didn't draw that all that accurately because this is more like it. The numbers, the lines just get closer and closer and closer together. So a sawtooth should look like this when we look at it in our spectrum. A square wave, as I recall, is just the even harmonics. And the sine wave should just have the fundamental, shouldn't have any harmonics at all. And the triangle wave will be our little experiment. And so I'm playing a song, and I could just push record, and now anything I play is being recorded to track 1. And these colors are my note colors, so that's a C, an E, and a G, C, an E, and a G, and an E. Okay, so, but I can record, and I can stop recording, and I can long press on the track to delete it. Boom, I'll record another track. Stop recording, and now if I hit the tracks button a second time, it goes into this detail view where I can examine the recording in more detail. So that's the whole thing, and I can zoom in on it, and then I can look at it, and I can play it. Okay, it was recording at 80 beats per minute, so whatever I was doing, it snapped me to that grid, and even it didn't feel as even as when I played it. But for my purposes today, I don't care, because I'm not going to be playing myself. I'm going to be using a arpeggiator. Now, what the arpeggiator does is you pick a key signature, for example, C major, and these then become the 7 chords, Roman numerals 1 through 7, for that key signature. The C scale is C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. If you look at the 1 chord for a C major is a C, the 2 chord is a D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor, B minor. So the C, D, E, F, G, A, B is just the same. But if you go to, like, say, B flat major, the one guy is going to be the B flat, which I guess over here I have to do that way. And then after that they're in order. So B, C, D, E, F, G, and then it wraps around to A. Each of those letters, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, should appear once, no matter what key signature I have. And to make that happen, there may be sometimes, like this one's an E flat, maybe sometimes that needs to be a D sharp if I don't already have a D and I otherwise might have 2 E's. It's the same note, but just nomenclature-wise, I find it aesthetically more appealing if I do that. I can, here, let me just change this to speed 2 and change it to an actual pattern up, and we'll turn on latching mode. So now when I tap the 1 button, okay, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to record pretty much exactly that. And then we're going to play it out of, again, back to our little drawing here. We're going to play it out of our sequencer and feed it back into the vocoder and measure it and then look at it. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pick, what did I call that? Oh yeah, I had one of my mental problems and called it a triangle when really it's a sawtooth. So this is a loud triangle wave. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bind it to the arpeggiator by long pressing here. Okay, so now when the arpeggiator plays, it's going to use this obnoxious sound instead of. So I can go ahead and turn the sound down a bit on that. The point is that it's a very rich sound now, filled with harmonics. And so just to test that as our first experiment, can we duplicate the spectrum for a sawtooth? So we're going to just, first of all, go over to here and go to the nerd options and turn on this new option, let vocoder record synth. Now, if you forget that you've turned that on, the symptom will be that the vocoder can no longer record from the microphone. So if that seems to break, then you've probably turned that thing on. And so for this, we just go to the vocoder and we just put it in music mode, which sets the filters to the 128 notes of the MIDI scale. And then we go into record. So now anything that happens will be recorded. So now we'll come over here and we'll just play middle C using this obnoxious triangle sound. Actually, I'm going to go down as low as I can go. Because I have an upper frequency limit that I can measure, so this will let me see more harmonics. Okay, so I just played a whole bunch. So if we go over here to the vocoder and stop the recording, you can see these lines here represent the tone I held for a long time, another tone I held for a long time, and another tone I held for a long time. So this is that last tone I held. And then for each one, you can see that there's actually, whoa, there goes my pen. There's actually multiple lines. Can you see that? So there's a bright line along the bottom, and then a line above that, and then another line. It's kind of like looking at the rings of Saturn, a lot of tiny little sub-rings. But each of those lines is a harmonic, and they're each getting dimmer. That's why they're getting darker. That's why it's fading to an ombre blanc. And although the fundamental frequency is 3 different frequencies here, the harmonics, you can see, have the same relationship. They have the same relative spacing to the fundamental. Now, if I just play that back, we see the fundamental, and this was when I was doing middle C. So now I went down an octave to an octave below middle C, and then I finally went down there. Okay, so well, that's nice and gravelly, isn't it? I can just tap up here, and I'll see the spectrum at that point. So here we see, for this entire time probably, it doesn't change much. It's very loud, 177 million, so that's too loud. So my loud triangle wave is too loud, so I need to cut that down a little bit, and that'll give me a chance to name it Sawtooth, as I should have. And I think I'll name it Loud Sawtooth so that all the loud signals will be next to each other alphabetically. Okay, anyway, but just to look at this, what we see is we see a first harmonic, the fundamental, second harmonic, which is 1 octave up, which is confirmed by the fact that they're both red, red being the color of the note C. And then the fourth harmonic is another C. It's right there. End up with that C. And so in between the second and fourth harmonic is the third harmonic. And the third harmonic is a fifth above the second harmonic. So if you count up 7 half steps from C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you get G, and that is in fact, G is the third harmonic of this C, and it's the, that's the second harmonic of the C, and that's the third harmonic of the C. But between the second and the third harmonic is a 7 half step interval, or a perfect fifth, which is something that humans find very appealing. So then there we have the fourth harmonic, which is another C, and then we have the fifth, sixth, and seventh harmonics before we get to the eighth harmonic, which is the next C. So we can see the eighth harmonic there, and this is the ninth harmonic, and that's the last one that we can really see. Now the other thing is that these buckets are, they're 1 full semitone wide each, and when you get into these, you can only go up to about the ninth harmonic before you need a smaller bucket. So I can't, the 57th harmonic doesn't land exactly on a particular unique half step distance from the fundamental. But other than that, the harmonics all do exist at exact precise. So like this second harmonic is exactly 12 half steps from the fundamental, always. No matter what the fundamental is, the second harmonic will be 12 half steps above it. The third harmonic will be 19 half steps, 12 plus 7. The next one will be 24 half steps. And then you just kind of got to look at your cheat sheet for the rest. But here we see, for this sawtooth, we see all of the harmonics represented up to at least 9. And we see that they are provided in diminishing levels. And it's not exactly like I've drawn here, but I didn't draw it very well. So that's pretty good. But remember that that's where the third harmonic is. The third harmonic is this G That would be G2, I guess. So now we switch to, square wave loud. Okay, that sounds like this. So we go ahead and throw away those samples and start a new recording, and then we'll just play again. We'll play that really low C. Really low C. So we're playing the same note, which is C4, C3, C2. So this is C2, and it's a square wave, and the volume's up. Okay, that's a lovely sound. Now we come over here and we stop the recording. And again, it's too loud. 359 million. Yeah, so I'm just picking up distortion from that. But check it out. So it looks like I got it wrong. Because that's not the even harmonics. That's the first harmonic, not the second harmonic. Yes, the third harmonic, not the fourth harmonic. Yes, the fifth harmonic. And not the eighth, fifth, sixth, seventh. I'll bet you it's just the seventh. I bet you that B flat is the seventh. And then the eighth would have been the C, and then the ninth would be there. So yeah, it's the odd. Okay, so the square wave on my experiment is the sum of all the odd harmonics. But that's fine. Everything's cool, and that's more or less kind of what we expected. Let's now try a sine wave. And for this experiment, I can actually just use any old sine wave I have lying around. So now, again, we go over here, and we start another recording, and come back over here, and we play that same test note. La la la. Only now it's a sine wave. Okay, we stop. We stop the recording, and we hear that, but it's more of a click than a tone. And if we click up here, check it out. There are no harmonics at all. We just see the fundamental. So we just see the fundamental, and then that's it. So, you know, go figure, Fourier's not a complete idiot, huh? Okay, but let's just try triangle now because I'm curious. So to do that, we go back to our synthesizer, and we go to our oscillator, and we change it from sine wave to triangle wave. Come back over here, start a new recording, come back over here, hold down that same key. This time is a triangle. Okay, and now we go back over here and we stop the recording, and we can see once again it's basically just a sine wave, but what we see is we see one peak here. Oh, it's a G. That's apparently what a triangle wave is, a little bit of the third harmonic bleeding through. So let's just do that on our little chart here. Here's the third harmonic. Just a little tiny bit of 1 and 3. And we confirmed that the sine wave just showed 1. Okay. So I'm going to play that song. So here we go. We'll turn this window up while we do it. And we'll play the up pattern at speed 2, so that'll be 2 ARP notes per beat. And our beat is set to, we'll change that to 60. Just so that 1 beat per second, so we can test that. Go back to tracks. There's no tracks recorded. We're going to start recording a track by clicking here, and then we'll start playing the song, and then when we're done, we'll stop recording. And the song is going to be just a classic major scale riff in, let's make it G minor. I can look at this for a metronome if I want to. Da, da, da. Now I stop the recording. Okay, so this little colored band at the top shows the notes that the arpeggiation played. If we look at it in detail, we can see how the arpeggiation worked, and this is a little more interesting than I wanted to be. And in fact, this was a mistake. You'll notice there's more notes than we expected. That's because I had the vocoder on while recording the song the first time. We have to redo that. I'm sorry. Here we go. We delete it. We turn off the vocoder recording and clear the data. And now we record our test song again. So we need to be in latching mode. We need to start recording. And here we go. Okay, so again we look, and hopefully this was track 1. Yeah. So here we see the arpeggiation in all of its glory, and we see that each note is exactly the same length. The steps are all nice. The end of one note is the beginning of the next note at the finest resolution of the clock, and the progressions move. Whoops. So here it was based on a C chord, and then it moved to a D chord. Everything's fine. Kind of flew around. I can play it back. Okay, so now we have that. It is a test song. And I zoomed out one level so it looks like this. So it's going to play the song. The song is going to head towards the speaker. It's going to also come around and come back in through the vocoder. And then, because we're in record, it's going to go back in and record a second track. So track 1 is our original song, and track 2 is going to be what the vocoder heard. And we'd like them to be identical. That would be great. So let's see what happens. So I just push record. And okay, look at that. It looks very clean. No harmonics. We're doing a pure sine wave, so that makes sense. Okay, so now we stop the recording, stop the vocoding, and we also stop the groove recording. It looks like the first notes didn't get captured, so that's interesting, and the rest of it is about right with a couple of pauses. Clearly it was pretty close, but now we'll see when we look at it. So the green notes are track 1, which we'll zoom in even more. So they're the right answer, and these gray notes are the track we got back. Now that's unfortunate. I have broken it. Bad demo. Okay, we're going to try that experiment again. We have a synthesizer that goes into a sequencer, which records what the synthesizer played. The sequencer can then play that data back, so it can come out of speaker. It can store it in a little database of grooves, and with this new option, it can feed it back in through the vocoder which normally records sound from the microphone, but when you click this switch, it now records sound from the sequencer synthesizer output, and the vocoder then can turn that into note events, which are then fed back into the sequencer just as if they came from the synthesizer. And they then can be recorded as a separate channel. So what we're going to do is we're going to record a little test song on the sequencer. Then we're going to play that song and record it through the vocoder and just look at what it looks like and see what we can learn from that. I just did the experiment where I tried the various primary waveforms and demonstrated that in fact the vocoder sees pretty much the harmonic content that we expected to see. Okay, so I've created some quiet versions, like quiet sawtooth. It's a sawtooth, but instead of being all the way up at full strength, it's down 10 dB. And the reason for that is that when I loop it around into the vocoder, it's obviously a very loud signal, and I don't want to overdrive the vocoder input. The vocoder has a preamp to help me adjust for that, but I'd rather not give it a harder problem than it has to have. Okay, but along those lines, we're going to start with, we're going to start with quiet triangle. And we're going to bind that to the arpeggiator. So now we're going to put the arpeggiator in latch mode, and we're at speed 2, so there'll be two arpeggiation notes per beat. And our beat is running at 60 beats per minute. So if we just start recording, we're now recording a song. Expertly played. So up here in the track summary, you can actually, because the song is so short, you can still see each of the individual notes as a little rectangle of color, where we have learned that red, as in Roy G. Biv, red is the C, as in C, D, E, F, G, A, B, is the note C, and we know that E becomes yellow and G becomes sky blue, so that's apparently a C, E, G. If we tap the tracks button again, we can see the detail view. And we can see it started a little before frame 3. Now I'm going to be anal, and I'm going to relocate it to start, on frame 4. I'm going to be making multiple recordings, and I'm going to try and have them all line up on frame 4 as their start. And the way that worked, by the way, is you first set a start point using this button here, and then you pick a destination, and then you hold this button, and the whole song is moved from the start point to whatever destination you've picked. You know, do it at your risk, at your peril. Just listening to the playback. You know, that's a bug. I think when the start cursor is literally in the first step of the note, I think I end up abbreviating the first note. And I think if I just move the start back a little bit, like say there, start. So now the green line is long before that. I think it'll be a full length note. But it's one of those things that it's like the pause before the musicians actually start singing, you know, do you want that pause baked into your recording or not baked into your recording? And right now, it seems to me to be more convenient to have a little bit of a pause baked in. Okay, so if we look at this, This is not perfect because it's synchronized to quarter notes basically. So these are basically quarter notes. Yeah, that's right. 2 16th notes, quarter notes. And they're very regular, very regular, very regular until, even after that they're regular. They're regular until here. Something goes wrong around here. So that's the error. This guy stopped fine, but this guy didn't start until one step later. Anyway, so that's our original song, and we could fix that. We could move those guys, but we're not going to. We're just going to remember that it had that one flaw when we started. We just remember this is track 1. Again, what we're going to do is we've recorded a little test song. It's in the sequencer right now. We're going to turn on the option to flip it back through the vocoder. We're going to let the vocoder tell us if it hears any notes, and if it hears anything that it thinks is music, it'll send events back up into the sequencer. So for this, I'm actually going to plug in the cable here because I have a feeling that even though I go to options, nerd options, and turn on let vocoder record synth, you can turn that on or off. Even though that's on, I think there's some leakage. I think some of the microphone stuff gets in anyway. And so rather than feed it whatever ambient sounds are in the room here, which are noisy, horribly noisy, I've got it plugged into what I hope is a silent sound source. So for this, all we have to do is just make sure we're in music mode, which we are, and then start the vocoder recording. And then come over here and we're going to push record, which is going to record a new track 2. It'll also play back the prior tracks. So what'll happen is when we get to this point here, it'll start making sound, which will then come back in through the vocoder. Well, I guess watch here. So it'll start about now. Okay, and we see notes coming in, doom doom. And there was a little dead zone there, like it didn't really capture the first couple notes. But those all look really clean. Now here we're using a triangle. I was going to use a sine wave because that's, super cheaty. But I use a triangle, and as we saw before, a triangle seems to be just the fundamental and a very weak third harmonic. And everything else is too small to show up on my scope. Anyway, so that's done. And so let's go back. Let's turn off this recorder. And you can see the spectral recording. So these are spectrograms 25 times a second, but since the note is held for half a second, there's 12 or so spectrums, I guess, of each note. So you can just see the arpeggiation going up and down, and then it's done. Now you can just tap up here and look at an individual spectrum, and you can adjust the endpoints, and you can play just that subset. Now I already see that here at the vocoder level, there's overlap. There's moments in time where 2 notes are playing at the same time. And we know that in the raw data that was never true. So that has to be that it's hanging on to a note longer than the actual data was really there. That's not entirely true. What happens is over on the sequencer, when it plays a note, it just sends a signal down into the synthesizer saying, oh, a virtual person has touched the key. Oh, a virtual person has let go of the key. And the timing is based on when it decides to let go of the key. But in fact, the note that you started when the key went down does not stop the instant you lift the key. It has some decay time. So that decay time makes the note last a little longer than it was in the original sequencer, and that gives us the situation where there's a little overlap between the notes, between the otherwise sequential notes. Okay, so we have explored this simple data set enough that I'm going to delete it. And then we're going to go back to the sequencer, which is still recording. So now the song is very long with a whole bunch of silence at the end. I don't think I have any way of dealing with that. I don't think I can delete empty space. And here we're selected on track 1, so the green dots are track 1, and track 2, our recorder, our signal back from the vocoder, which we want to be identical. We can see it, these little gray areas. So let's switch to track 2. So now the green dots are track 2. And what we see is, remember how I said at the very beginning there that it like missed a few notes at the very beginning? And that's these 3 notes here. I just didn't capture them at all. And then it looks like it captured these 4 all starting right on the beat, but they all lasted, well, these 3 lasted exactly 1 extra 16th note. And again, the first 3 are each a little long, and this one is not long. And let's see, so up until this point, the starting edges were still perfectly synchronized. And at this point, they're still perfectly synchronized, but they're 1 beat late. So this is that thing where in the original signal, track 1, there was the gap. And then in track 2, it did not add an additional gap. It is just, it's actually, these are really good starting edges. Anyway, so that's what happened, and that was pretty great. So if I play this right now, I'll play back both tracks at the same time. It'll be kind of a chorus effect, and you'll hear the errors as longer or shorter versions of the notes. And if there are any extra notes outside of the arpeggiation that we are expecting. So the only flaw there really is the 16th note longer than expected note durations. And that could be explained by, over here in the synthesizer, quiet triangle is being driven from this contour generator. So in fact, when it releases, it doesn't fall immediately. So we could do that instead. Okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's also make it shorter, because we only have like a half a second. So let's make sure that the note fits comfortably inside of that half a second. Or in fact, it'll last as long as the sequencer tells it to hold it, followed by this amount of additional time. But since we're going to head to 0 as fast as we can, this should give us pretty crisp notes. But to use this, we'll need to actually create an instrument. So this is quiet triangle and abrupt. Okay, and now we go back to our test song and we change its band member from quiet triangle to quiet triangle abrupt. That was easy. And now if we play it, have we done that yet? Oh, yeah, we just did. It will now play it using quiet triangle abrupt. Now okay. So I'm going to mute track 2, which came in from the vocoder. And then we're going to record track 3 from the same source material, but now using that abrupt triangle wave. And we're going to see if what effect that has on the note durations. So we come over here and we try to put that in record again. Then come back over here and we put that in record again. Okay, so new notes are appearing. We see them appearing on the rhythm rainbow here. And they're showing up as 2 million as their energy level. That's actually a little low. That might be why it missed those first notes. Okay, so that's all recording. So we stop that guy again. And once again, we have a vocoder recording. Let's go over here and stop that guy this time, just in case. But now looking at the vocoder recording first, because it's kind of ephemeral, we'll just listen to it. And this is always slower, and it's not supposed to be, but it is. That's the raw samples. So you see, I have errors in my raw samples. If I get rid of those, other things will be that much better. And that's it. The important thing is that pretty much each note was just a pure sine wave. It's a triangle wave, but we know that only gives us a little bit of noise around the third harmonic. Okay, anyway, so we'll delete that. Donk. And we'll go back to the groove, and we'll highlight track 3. And so this is our new track, and it got the first 4 notes, as did track 2, but now the middle 2 are the proper length, and the first and the last are long. Then that one's proper, but otherwise the same as track 2. So I'm going to say it actually is better. It's not perfect, but it's more often, okay, those are all fat. But that's, 3/4 not fat, 3/4 not fat, specifically on track 3, the green notes. So, so some of this stuff is from the decay. The part that I really like is how reliable the starting moments have been at this speed. Okay, but so that's pretty good. So now let's try same test song, but now we'll play it at 120 beats per minute. Anyway, by the way, if you're fussing getting it to an exact value, which you probably shouldn't do anyway, just tap it. It'll go up down one at a time. So you can drag, but you can also just tap. So we're going to do the experiment one more time, and this time I'm going to leave the thing unplugged, so we'll see if there really is that leakage I said I was worried about. Okay, so we're going to mute track 3, and we're going to create a new track 4. And here we go. We just have to put this guy back in record mode, and then put this guy in record. And so he's recording track 4, for which there's been no data yet. Now there's been data, and it's going faster. Now, so it should last half as long, but the definition of half as long, the line still goes over, yeah. I find it melts my brain a little bit to think about that. Because should these line up now? Because I recorded this one at a BPM that was twice as fast as these other 3 were done. So clearly that should make some difference. But if you actually look at the chart here, doesn't look like it made a difference. And if we go into the details and we look specifically at track 4, it does look like it's retarded by 1/16 note. So what I'm going to do there is I'm going to mark. How's this one? Okay, so I've marked, you can see that, right? I've marked the first green note of track 4, and I'm going to mark that as my start of song. And then I wish that that occurred here at line 4, measure 4. So now I'm going to move it. And I'm moving everything on this track. So I'm not moving the whole song. The other tracks are unaffected by this, knock on wood. Okay, so we know that, reality is that there is going to be a real-time delay. We may not have ultimate control over whether or not we're a 16th note late in general. But for right now, given that, I already know that that exists, so this allows me to see other things of interest. Like here, we were also a 16th late at the onset of the note. So this one was long, 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 and this one was late, but not long. Long, 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 perfect. Long, perfect, long, long, long. Fast mode with a short decay was about as good as slow mode with a long decay. That's okay. This is, I'd love it to be perfect, but this is I think, for my needs, this is an acceptable error. And claps for the vocoder for hearing those notes and not hearing a bunch of other crap. I mean, the vocoder is hearing everything, so it could choose to hear a bunch of other stuff, which is the next experiment, where we're going to use the vocoder to play back our same test song, but we're going to map it to an instrument that is a sawtooth and that has all of these harmonics. So we were using a triangle and a sine wave, which very few harmonics, very, very few harmonics. And the reason I keep talking about harmonics is because the vocoder is going to see for a single note that is, when you think of what frequency is that note, it's the fundamental frequency. In the case of a sawtooth, it's going to look like 10 little notes distributed up the scale. And when it gets to our recording of our song, we don't want to end up with 10 little notes. We want to just figure out what that primary fundamental note is and do that. So just in case this is of historical interest, we're going to clone this with all 4, and we're going to say test arp 4 channel. Okay, and now we're going to keep our test recording on channel 1, but we're going to delete channels 2, 3, and 4. Okay, and so now if we go into detail mode and go back to channel 1, we just see the original stuff, which is quarter notes with that one gap here. We need to pick an instrument, and we want the quiet sawtooth. This will be our worst case scenario. We go to the sequencer, and we go to the band panel, and currently the song is playing using the quiet triangle abrupt because we overrode it a minute ago. Well, we're going to override that same one again, but now with the quiet sawtooth. So now when we play that same song, it's going to play it with the quiet sawtooth instead, which will be a lot scratchier than it was. And here you can see my performance pause, that little gap in time in the arpeggiation where I was late. Okay, so that's going to be our test recording, very buzzy, and oh, look at that, it was on. Okay, since this was on, I can focus on the end, and this actually should be what we just did. So here, remember before, where as it arpeggiated, we just saw one bar going up, boom, boom, boom. Now, wherever we are, there's a primary bar, then we, the fundamental, and then in this case it's a G, sky blue, G, and if we look up one octave, G, there's a second harmonic, and if we look up a fifth above that, 7 half steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that's a D, and sure enough there's a D, so that's a third harmonic, and then there's another G, that's 2 octaves up, so that's the fourth harmonic, so the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, now you just barely make them out. So up to the first 8 or 9 harmonics, we can totally see it. It's a sawtooth. It's what we saw before in our other experiment, that a single note, this one D note, looks like 10 notes. But the giveaways are that they are at regular intervals, at very specific intervals. And when it's a different note, like here, it's a B flat, purple light. Again, there's a first harmonic, but now that, I'm sorry, a second harmonic, but that's now B flat instead of a whatever it was before. And again, there's a third harmonic and a fourth and a fifth and a sixth and seventh and eighth. So whichever note you start on, you see, well, this one's a little interesting because we see that's not a harmonic. That's either the note before or after. So if we go backwards, okay, so if we go back through one at a time, it's primarily the purple note, then the orange note, then the aqua G. But as you see over the lifetimes of the notes, as the notes come in, all of the harmonics come in with them. And let's start at the beginning there. So note comes in, it's got its harmonics. New note comes in, it's got its harmonics. In between, there's this uncomfortable moment where both notes are big over here, and both notes are providing harmonics, and it's a very turbulent harmonic-y kind of environment. And as you can see, my algorithms have said, in all of this stuff, the only note I'm hearing is this aqua, this G. So for purposes of somebody sitting at a piano playing notes, these are the notes that are being hit. Everything else is just color. And when I play it back, I'm going to play it back on an instrument that'll bring in its own color. So all I need is the note. What key of the keyboard did they tinkle on? That's unfortunate. Okay, so now, do I approve that being G right there? Let's go back in time, back in time, back in time. Yeah, it's been G for a while, so it's still G. Forward in time, forward in time. The new guy, B flat's coming on. He's bringing in his harmonics. None of them have been dubbed a note yet. I keep it going, forward, forward again, and then bang. At this point in time, I say, okay, he's a note. I don't fall for any of his harmonics. And the other guy, yeah, you're a note too. There's some overlap. And down here, we saw that there was overlap. And overlap is okay. I mean, it's nice if it's true. And now I'm purple, but now there's a new note coming along. Looks like it's going to be a D. Looks like a D. And the old note's dying. And we got complex harmonics. And again, we're not accidentally triggering on any of these guys. And it's looking good. Okay, so in general, that looked pretty good. Now we do the actual experiment where we record track 2 You know, I am going to change it back to 60 beats per minute. And we'll just do that one more time. Which I think we can do as simply as just this. So now we're recording track 3. Oh, let's mute track 2 though. So only track 1 is going to be fed through the vocoder. Yeah, see, now it's not delayed as much. That's pretty interesting. So you can see these black areas where individual notes were delayed or shortened. This being the only one that was from an original performance recording. Yeah, you know, I really like using colors for this now. I really resisted that, but yeah, that's pretty cool. Oh, stop the recording. Okay, so yeah, superficially it looks like it did a decent job. So green notes here, okay. So now a proper note is that big. That's the correct note size. And they should be happening. Yeah, they're lined up with the black bars. So the arpeggiation starts right on a black bar. So boom, 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 boom is correct. And this is track 1, it's by definition correct. So we look at track 2, which we recorded with 120 beats per minute. So track 2 is all delayed a little bit. So let's do that trick to where we adjust for that. So now track 2, the one that was done at high speed, we've corrected for its late arrival, but we can see that for the most part it's long. And okay, I'll just cut to the chase. I'm interested in this area above the notes. You'll notice it's completely empty. Let's go to track 3. So track 3 was the one recorded with the buzzy sawtooth. If we were being fooled by any of those harmonics, they would show up in this area here. And Lord knows we've seen that a lot. Now it's also possible to get subharmonics that could show up down there, and we've seen that as well. But just now, in this recording, it didn't happen at all. It did a perfect job. So yeah, so I manually dialed in minus 9 dB. And I switched to the quiet instruments, so that's why it's relatively quiet. But still, it's doing good quiet. There were no harmonics that got through. So if I play it back, if I play back just track 3, I've muted the other 2 tracks. So you still hear the buzzing, but the reason is because it's mapped to that instrument. So it's being played back with the same instrument that was used to record it. But in the meantime, it threw away all that buzz. It threw away all that, all those harmonics to boil it down to being just notes. And if I change it again to quiet triangle by doing band, replace it, and then play it again. And now it's triangles. I wanted to try not muting the 3 channels. So this is the original and the fast recording and the buzzy recording all brought back together and played on a triangle. So to do that, I need to go here and push this. So the thing is that the errors add character when there's not a million harmonics showing up. So anyway, is that the end of that experiment? I think so. Did we prove everything that we wanted to prove? I think we did. Okay, so room to grow, but that's pretty good. Surviving Sawtooth is not easy. So what we're going to do is we're going to pause this, and then we're going to do a real song. I don't want to get in trouble with any copyright people. So we're going to search for free YouTube music. Here we go. Okay. And we'll just do a selection. So these are all official YouTube audio library, free for use in YouTube film musics. So what we're going to do is, this is a new experiment, so we're going to just delete these guys. Could have started a new groove. Come over here and let's just put it in record and look at what our, oh, sorry. Let's delete the old data. Go over here, back to our nerd options, let vocoder record synth, turn that off. So now we're recording from the microphone again. And we are in music mode. So this is what it looks like live. Oh, we got to plug in our little cable. Okay. So now I've got my magic cable so that sound from the computer goes straight to the tablet. No microphone involved. And what we look for here is an amplitude that we like. So this is too low, so the minus 9 dB is a bad idea here. So let's take it back up to the default +3. And that's pretty loud. So let's take it to 0. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, and if you look at the rhythm rainbow, you want to see these lines moving kind of at the rate of the music a second ago. So there's a little passage of time there. Okay, but it's in A minor, and we think that it was in the key of A minor. Okay, but we're not going to be recording entire songs. So let's just leave that running and come over here and we'll just record. Well, that's so easy. So this is that song as we perceive it. It's got some C's, got some E's, got some G's, got some B's, B flats maybe. Let's go back over to here. We think it might be C major. It's got some C chords, some A minor chords. C7, A minor, yeah, could well be. 5 million our energy, that's fine. Now that looks like a lot of notes, but it's a pretty rich sound, a lot of stuff going on. What we want up here, almost always the stuff up here is either harmonics or noise, just a cymbal crash that, like here, you can hear that, and so you can see this whole thing kind of go up and down together when there's a really broad spectrum noise. And like right there, I'm pretty sure that a few harmonics made it through. So I'm sure, like anytime down here when you see there's like 8 notes all held at the same time, that's, some of those are probably harmonics. I mean, if you have 8 musicians and they have 4 fingers each that are producing different sounds, obviously you can have a lot of simultaneous notes. So in this complex of an environment, I can't hope to be exact. So we'll just hope that it's evocative. So that's enough of this one. So we'll stop it, and we'll stop recording, and we'll stop recording the groove. And the groove was 190, I'm sorry. It was 1 minute and 57 seconds. It was 1,751 events. So you divide that by 2. Anyways, about 800 notes at 60 beats per minute. So that's 800 divided by 60 notes per beat. So that's 80 divided by 6. So that's about 12 notes per beat. You know, that's a lot of notes. So this is the spectrum of, I think we recorded that first song for a while and then it cut to the new song. So if we just click in here to find a spot and then push play. That doesn't sound like that sunny one, huh? I don't really make a lot of discrete notes there, so this is probably going to be pretty horrible. So if we just look at it, it's a lot of notes. It's a lot of notes. But this stuff up here in the 7th octave is usually pretty suspect. Now, if you've got a piano in the mix or a lot of crashing, then it can be reasonable, but I suspect that that's not going to sound good. The other thing is that in the real recording, if I did get something this high frequency, it was almost surely, you know, just a sine wave harmonic. But when I play it back, if I turn it into a note, then I'm going to turn it into a full rich note that may have zillions of harmonics, you know, way up there. And that tends to make it sound even worse, especially because I can't represent frequencies, high frequencies accurately, because my sampling rate is only 16,000. So then I bring in aliasing effects. Okay, anyway, so let's just hear it. What? Okay. I mean, I can hear the outlines of a song. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna move it up here so that all these high notes are off the top of the screen. And then I'm gonna click on the invisible filter and then play it again. So we won't hear those notes. We also won't hear any notes lower than D3. Okay, so let's take that to the extreme. Let's cut out all of the high notes and just hear the lowest notes that are actually in the song. So right about, what's this sound like? Okay, well, do I wish that that had done a better job? I don't know. I'm going to delete that one, and I'm going to go here and I'm going to not sample it at 60 beats per minute, which just imposes a snap to grid, especially for a fast song like that. It just makes it worse than it needs to have been. So let's just do another song. And this one. It's a little quiet. I feel like I've heard this one on somebody's video. It's nice and peppy. I think that's too fast for me. Pretty good harmonic suppression, though. That'll be hard. You can see drums often. If they're like toms, they have a bit of a tone. You'll see a big wide peak down here. I like it when you can see the whole thing kind of slide to the left or slide to the right as they do these little glissandos. Or I don't know, maybe that doesn't show up on the film, on the video. So it thinks this is F sharp minor. It thinks it's running at 110 beats per minute, and it's averaging 20 million. Boom, 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 boom. I see it in the reflected. I see it reflected in the energy. Boom, 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 boom. The little line at the bottom. Boom, 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 boom. You want to see colored lines that are going about in sync with each of those. Yeah, okay. So stop that. So the percussive events aren't going to be great. Okay, we stop recording, we stop recording, we pick a point and play. That's better. That's the melody. So that stuff in the background, those are harmonics leaking through. You see there's like a little horizontal line there, or not horizontal, that little diagonal line going up. When we get there, we'll hear that coming up now. Okay, I want to hear that part. This part has a lot of rhythmic, low frequency stuff. Could be a bass. Bump, 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 bump. Yeah. So when it's like here, but when it's like there, it's loud, and it's got a lot of excess peaks. So every place that we see this tall stack of high frequencies, it's probably a cymbal crash. And you can see them here in this one, but we properly did not trigger any notes. We just accepted that as a crash, no notes. Crash. That's a note. Whoops. Crash, and it looks like here, that's debatable. And then crash, no notes. So, okay, well maybe it'll come out okay. Okay, delete that. Sorry for that sound. Okay, now we go over to here and we look at this and woo! Really? Is that slow of a song? Did I do something wrong? Track 1? Oh. And we look at octave 4, and those look like pretty nice notes. And octave 6, those look like they could be harmonics. So let's start with the invisible filter still engaged and focus on the lower notes, just to hopefully hear the song. Well, okay, let's listen to it with everything. Okay, so those were important. Well, I think, I mean, obviously, if you were really trying to work with this song, you would end up having to edit it. Funny. So, is this a nice chord? That's neat. So I think the stuff in the middle is probably pretty close to right. The stuff at the bottom is probably pretty close to right. That there was some sound that justified it saying, oh, I think I heard a note right here. Now you get something like this. This is probably... Now, is this real? I mean, these do not sound good next to each other. It could be a trill. This could have been a B flat that trilled back and forth between B flat and A3 a little. Ooh. Do you think that could be? Yeah, anyway, I think that's what I wanted to show, that the importance of harmonic suppression during the vocoding of a song is so that you don't end up adding notes that were not really played by the performer. And the end.